The church bells rang softly that morning, echoing through the sleepy town of Willow Creek where dust met dreams and hearts were easily broken. Inside the small white chapel decorated with lilies and lace, everyone waited for a wedding they thought would be the happiest day of a young woman's life. Her name was Emma, gentle, quiet, and full of warmth that never seemed to fit inside her body. Life had been unkind to her. She was larger than most, the subject of whispers and cruel laughter since childhood. But she carried herself with grace, believing that love could see beyond appearances. And today she thought she'd finally found that love. Her groom, Daniel, stood at the altar in a pressed black suit, handsome and confident, the kind of man who turned heads wherever he went. Emma looked at him from behind the veil as her heart pounded with nervous excitement. She'd dreamed of this moment, the music, the flowers, the promise of forever. But as she took those slow, trembling steps down the aisle, she saw something shift in Daniel's eyes. His smile faded, his hands clenched, and before she could even reach the altar, the room grew tense with whispers. Daniel took a step forward and his words sliced through the air like a whip. "I can't do this," he said coldly, turning to the guests. "Look at her. She lied to me. She said she'd lose weight, she said she'd try, but she didn't. I can't marry someone like that." His voice echoed in the silence that followed. Emma froze, her bouquet trembling in her hands as her cheeks burned with shame. Every guest gasped. Some looked away, others whispered in pity. Her mother cried softly in the back row. Emma wanted the ground to open up and swallow her whole. She had spent months preparing for this day. Every dress fitting, every prayer whispered to heaven for acceptance. And now the man she thought loved her had publicly shattered her heart. Tears welled in her eyes as Daniel tossed the ring on the floor and turned his back. "You should have known better, Emma," he muttered. "A man has his limits." For a moment, time stopped. The priest lowered his gaze. The crowd stared in shock. Emma's breathing grew shallow, her heart aching under the weight of humiliation. She wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't move. And then, just as the shame was about to crush her completely, a deep, calm voice spoke from the crowd. "I'll marry her," it said, strong and sure. Everyone turned. At the back of the chapel stood a tall cowboy, broad-shouldered, dust on his boots, hat in hand. His name was Luke, a rancher known around Willow Creek for his quiet nature and honest heart. He stepped forward, his eyes soft but steady as they met Emma's tear-streaked face. "If he doesn't see what he's got in front of him," Luke said, "then he's blind. I'll take her hand and I'll mean it." The crowd gasped again, this time louder. Even Daniel froze, his pride wounded by the cowboy's boldness. "You can't just walk in here and say that," he barked. Luke ignored him. He looked only at Emma, his voice low and kind. "You deserve a man who'll stand beside you, not one who'll run when life gets real." Emma's lips trembled. Why would you do that?" she whispered. Luke smiled softly. "Because real beauty doesn't fade, and I see more in your eyes than he ever will." The priest hesitated, unsure what to do. But when Emma's tears turned to quiet disbelief, Luke reached out his hand. Slowly, almost fearfully, she placed hers in his, and that small gesture changed everything. The crowd began to murmur again, some in shock, others in awe. Daniel stormed out, red-faced and humiliated, while Luke stood firm at the altar. "If you'll have me," he said gently, "I'll make sure you never cry over a man like that again." Emma's tears spilled freely now, but this time they weren't from pain, they were from hope. The ceremony continued in stunned silence, but something beautiful happened as the vows were spoken. The whispers faded, and the light from the stained glass windows fell across Luke and Emma like a blessing. The cowboy's words were simple but powerful. "I promise to protect you, to respect you, and to love you for who you are, not what the world wants you to be." When he slipped the ring on her finger, the whole room seemed to breathe again. The same guests who once pitied Emma now clapped through their tears. And as Luke leaned close and whispered, "You're worth more than you know," she finally believed it. The story of that day spread across the town like wildfire. Some said Luke had gone mad, marrying a woman he barely knew, but others, especially those who had once mocked Emma, began to question their own hearts. Luke and Emma's marriage wasn't built on appearance or perfection. It was built on kindness, loyalty, and faith. Over time, Emma's laughter filled the ranch they built together. She grew stronger, not because she lost weight, but because she found peace in being loved without condition. Luke never made her feel small. never reminded her of that awful day. Instead, he reminded her daily that she was enough. "You saved me," she'd tell him sometimes. But Luke would just shake his head. "No, Emma. You saved yourself the moment you stopped needing his approval." Years later, as they watched the sun set from their porch, Emma thought about that wedding day and smiled. What once felt like the end of her story had been the beginning of a better one. Pain had led her to purpose, and rejection had led her to real love. She realized something every soul needs to hear. Sometimes life breaks you so it can rebuild you stronger. Sometimes the ones who walk away are just clearing the path for those meant to stay. And when you believe you're unworthy, that's when God sends someone to remind you otherwise. Dear viewers, if you've ever felt unwanted, unseen, or unloved, remember Emma's story. Don't measure your worth by how others see you. The right people will see your beauty beyond the surface. You are not too much or too little, you are exactly enough. Life has its ways of testing your faith, but never let someone's rejection make you forget your value. Like Emma, your breakthrough may come the moment you stop chasing approval and start embracing who you are. Months passed after that fateful wedding, and the town still whispered about the cowboy who married the girl everyone pitied. But Luke and Emma didn't care. Life on the ranch was quiet, honest, and full of small joys. Sunrises over golden fields, laughter echoing through the barn, and nights spent watching stars that seemed to bless their love. Emma slowly began to heal. She no longer hid behind baggy dresses or lowered her head when passing strangers. Luke's steady kindness made her feel seen for the first time, and with every sunrise she grew lighter, not in body, but in spirit. Yet even peace has its tests. One evening, Daniel returned to town bitter and empty after losing the woman who truly valued love. He sneered when he saw Emma at the market, calling out loud enough for all to hear, "How's the cowboy treating his charity case?" The words stung, but Emma only smiled softly. "Better than you ever could," she replied, her voice calm, her heart steady. When she told Luke what had happened, he looked at her with pride. "That's my girl," he said. "You stood tall without my help. That means you've already won." Those words sank deep into her heart. Emma realized she didn't need anyone to complete her. Luke hadn't saved her. He'd shown her how to save herself. Together they turned their ranch into a refuge for women who'd been mocked, abandoned, or broken. Each one found strength in Emma's story, and soon, what began as heartbreak became hope for many. At sunset, as Luke wrapped his arm around her shoulders, Emma whispered, "Do you think people will ever stop judging?" Luke smiled. "Maybe not. But as long as we keep loving louder, their voices won't matter." She leaned against him, the same way she had on their wedding day, and whispered, "Then let's love louder, every day." Subscribe now for more inspiring stories that remind you, true love isn't about looks. It's about courage, faith, and never giving up on yourself.